Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back to Islam in the 21st century. We've been discussing the role of the masjid in the UK, and we've been using the paper written by Sayyid Haidar, Mimbar Rising, which can be found on Islam21c.com. Do visit the website and join in this discussion, inshallah. Now, before the break, we were concluding on the problems that the masjid face, and there was one aspect that we had yet to cover was the idea that women are not included in actually getting access to the masjid and also running the masjid. I mean, would you say this is a major problem for taking the masjid forwards in the UK, Said?
I think it is. I think women's involvement speaks to the degree to which our community is cohesive, because if women are not even being allowed admission into mosques, that's the first hurdle. If they are being allowed admission into the mosque, I think that they ought to be allowed to get involved in the running of the mosque too. Their exclusion speaks to sort of half the Muslim population being excluded from mosques.
I mean, Asif, I think one of the major problems to Said's proposition here is there's quite a strong theological basis or not basis, but a theological reasoning to say that women shouldn't be included in the masjid according to some communities. I mean, would you agree that that is the case when it comes to the masjid?
I don't agree with that, simply because I feel that it is more of a cultural issue. If you look at many of the Arab mosques and mosques around the world, you'll find that there are places in which women can pray. There are places allocated to them. But unfortunately, you do not find this, and I'm speaking as a Pakistani, you don't find this in the Indian subcontinent in most cases. And I think that is a reflection that we find here. I think there needs to, because we are living in an area and we're living in a more tolerant society, I feel that there has to be some kind of compromise. There is an element in which Murtada said correctly that the mosques or the masajid, they're being filled in certain times of the year. So it's very seasonal when the mosques are fully utilized. This is example Friday prayers. This is the Eids, and so on and so forth. And so perhaps as a halfway measure, because the obligation of praying Friday prayers and also Eid, if it's not done on an open plain, then this is an obligation upon the men, but not necessarily an obligation upon the women. And for the women to come to the mosque, it is not an obligation, but for the men it is. So, but at the same time, it's not a reason for them to be excluded from the masjid. And they should be encouraged to come to the mosques to partake in the circles, the talks that are taking place, the events that are taking place.
Asif, can I just ask you, can I jump in and ask you a question? What do you say to mosques who cite practical reasons for not letting women in, who say, we don't have a problem with it, but because of space, we can't accommodate them?
This is what I mean by having a compromise. What they can do as a compromise is to allocate an area for the women to pray 5 times a day, but not necessarily for Friday prayers.
Yeah.
Because the mosque is not being utilized fully when the prayer is being established 5 times a day. So as a halfway measure, they can do this. Mm-hmm. So they're not being completely excluded, and this is a way of inviting them, encouraging them, because this can be very disheartening for the women not to come to the mosque. And if they do choose, Islamically, if they do choose to come to the masjid, then they should, even their husband and even their father is not allowed to say, you're not allowed to come to the mosque. They are allowed to come.
But I think it's important here to point out that when I say that it's important for women to get involved with the mosque, it's not simply as users of services. I think it's important for them to be part of the framework of the mosque, the people who are deciding what services should be in place. I mean, definitely for women's issues, women should be deciding those matters. I think something like that requires women to be in the mosque on the administrative level.
Agreed. And this goes back to what Murtada said with respect to the youth. If the youth are not coming to the mosque, then there's no point in discussing whether they should be involved in the administration. If it comes to that stage where women have been given access to the mosque, which is the beginning or the embryonic stages to that progression, to that development, then of course we can discuss their involvement in the running of the mosque and so on and so forth, because there are things that they will be involved in that men will not be able to be involved in. So example, they may have a women's day in which they'll have a circle or a conference just for women, example. This will involve them running that and administrating.
Jazakumullah khair. We want to draw a line on the issue. I mean, a very interesting anecdote on that issue of women in the masjid was an Islamic scholar who once said that women can pray in shopping centres now, but they're unable to pray in the masjid, which is quite amusing to see. But let's draw a line under those problems now, and let's move in this last segment to the solutions and the things and models of success in the masjid. Sayyid Haider, I mean, looking at the way a masjid is run, what is a successful model of running a masjid? I mean, is it now implementing the Quranic idea of shura, or what do you feel is the way of running a masjid correctly in the UK here today?
I think there's an emphasis on the need for more skilled organization, for people with specific skill sets actually entering the masjid and being encouraged to come into the masjid, people who perhaps have or can lend their skills from other sectors, so they might be working in other places, but that they're actually brought in to the masjid to advise on and perhaps even help create the kind of ethos and the atmosphere in which, and the framework by which mosques can be more smoothly run. I think it's, and this is where I think the focus of the paper rests, but it's a kind of, there's kind of tension in the paper, which is that on the one hand it's talking about structures and organization, which I think is easier to sort out, and on the other hand there's a kind of lingering sense of mindset, a problem of mindset, which is much harder to sort of sort out. So I think if you're asking me about how to run a mosque, I think that's actually an easier one to sort out, and it simply means better, efficient or more efficient organization, and possibly through the involvement of people who have specific skills in that.
Okay. I mean, what about the issue, Murtaza, of stronger leadership? Because very often the religious sort of leader, the imam of the masjid, is quite divorced from the committee of the masjid, and there's that tension there where the committee, who maybe don't have a stronger Islamic understanding, are calling the shots, and the imam is just left to lead the prayer. I mean, is that a problem in the way let's call it the political structure of the masjid exists?
Yeah, I think this is a very controversial and pertinent issue that you've hit on, and let's focus on the solutions.
How would that be solved?
I would say that it's not necessary for the imam to be the political leader and the religious leader, but it would be good if that was possible, if he had the skills to do so. But as we know, in many mosques that is not the case. The committee is the political leadership and the imam is the religious leadership. But the committee must consult with the imam on a genuine basis, where if he cites authentic sources and a proper understanding of those sources and advises them earnestly, they should follow it, they must follow it. In many cases we see that they treat the imam as an employee, and they see themselves as the employer and therefore the boss, and see themselves above in hierarchy. And this is really not conducive to the most Islamic environment. So I think the imam should be given more credit, should be given more importance, even if he is not established as the political leader of the masjid.
More efficient organization, as Sayyid said, a more stronger leadership, as Murtaza is referring to. Are there any other sort of aspects that you think need to be implemented to get to that level of a model mosque, of how it should be running, get the masjids to open their doors, so to speak?
I think Sayyid touched on it, and that was a mindset. I think this is the greatest stumbling block for progression, and there are very few things I can suggest as a solution for that. But I feel that things will be getting better, inshallah, as the generations pass, as the culture not always, it shouldn't always be seen as a negative thing, but in some respect it will be lost in some sense of the word. And so once the years go by, I think the people, or the newer generation and the generation that comes after them, they will have inshallah a better understanding of tolerance, of other cultures, of other languages,
of the role of the masjid,
more importantly the role of the masjid in inviting the non-Muslims and also other communities into the masjid, inshallah.
Could I just go on?
Well, I was just going to say, I think you're right about that. I think one of the a practical solution to tackle the mindset may be something like, for instance, organising a conference for the people who run mosques, actually, which I don't, to my knowledge, I don't know whether it's taken place, to my knowledge it hasn't, where actually people who are running mosques are invited into a conference where discussion, so that a narrative can start to sort of emerge, whereby people start to think, actually, I've got this institution, I'm in charge of it, or I'm part of the committee that's in charge of it. The conference ideas sound, it's inviting, rather than didactic and telling, it's inviting, and it's perhaps allowing them to become part of a narrative.
Could I just add to that quickly, in that we've talked about women and children, they cannot participate in the running of the mosque if they're not in the mosque, but I should also add to that the committee should be encouraged to take proactive steps to involve youth and women in the running of the masjid. It's not good enough to say as an excuse, well, no one's asked, or there aren't any potential. There's lots of potential candidates. There's lots of capable people who would commit to it if they were groomed in that manner. If they were talked to, if they were told about the possibilities of getting involved in the running of the masjid. There is enough proactivity, I think.
Jazakallah proactivity. We've got to end there because we've run out of time for today. Jazakallah khair for all the panelists, all their valued, beautiful contributions to this topic, inshallah. We've discussed historical, what the masjid should be. We've discussed the problems, and we've tried to touch on some of the solutions, inshallah, of the role of the masjid in the UK today. Do log on to www.islam21c.com and have a read of the paper, Mimbar Rising by Sayyid Haider. Joining the discussion with your comments on the website. It's very easy to do that. No sign up necessary, inshallah. And then also, Jazakumullah khair for watching, and join us next time on Islam in the 21st century. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.